Hey, Robert students, this is Mr. Helmick, your principal, and regardless if you are a virtual student or an in-person student, I wanted to come into your classroom today and read a story to you. The story I'm going to read is called The Little Chapel That Stood. You know, today is a very significant, important day in our country's history. 19 years ago, we had a really sad event happen in New York City where the Twin Towers had a plane crash into them, and unfortunately the towers fell to the ground. This is a very sad day for a lot of people. But one of the amazing things is that good came out of this. And so I'm going to read this story to you because it's a special story about a chapel close by that made a huge difference for the people. The Little Chapel That Stood, by A.B. Curtis and illustrated by Mirta Golini. Around the chapel of Old St. Paul blow the dancing leaves of the coming fall. In the morning breeze they leap and fly beneath the towers that scrape the sky. George Washington's family worshipped here. Alexander Hamilton's grave lies near. Since 1776 has stood this house of God in bricks. Solid and steadfast as time whirled around it, unchanged since horse and carriage found it. So here's an image of our first president, George Washington, and you can see the chapel there and what it looked like hundreds of years ago. A solace to presidents, help to the poor, no one was even turned from its door. An immigrant's refuge, a sojourner's peace, where hope is born and sorrows cease. Many people came to this chapel to find support, hope, and comfort. As the centuries passed, and centuries would be hundreds of years, right? As the centuries passed and the city grew dense, its buildings grew higher and wider and immense. And the tallest and grandest, the city's great pride, the New York Twin Towers rose up by its side. So there you can see the little chapel down there in the bottom and those huge twin towers rising behind it. The stress of power, the rush of people found comfort and rest beneath its steeple. But doom was coming all the time. Doom to a city fair and fine. Doom was in the plains that climbed. And doom, and then the sirens whined. So obviously something here is happening. People aren't quite sure what it is yet. Two planes, hijacked by a terrorist crew, struck the Twin Towers. No warning, no clue. Who thought it could happen or knew what to do? Firemen came and New York's men and women in blue. People are trying to figure out what is going on. Through the flying glass and smoke and din, thousands rushed out as these brave men rushed in. On the stairwell to safety, there was no stranger. Each helped the other flee from the danger. And some who climbed down remember clear-cut the faces of firemen climbing up. So you can see in the Twin Towers, a lot of these, they had the stairwells where they needed to climb down to safety. And as people were climbing down to safety, the firemen, a lot of them were climbing up, even though the building was on fire, to save as many people as they could. And then, oh, unthinkable thought, they fell. One tower, the other, they fell. They fell with a rush and they fell with a roar. The sky was blanket where they'd been before. And more was lost than who can say. It was our hearts came down that day. Through the clouds of black, no one could see how far spread this calamity. The giants around it had come to fall. So here you can see the little chapel's there, but tons of billowing smoke and ash rose in the air. But not the chapel of Old St. Paul. It was something of wonder, a symbol of grace. The steeple still there, not a brick out of place. Some say the giant sycamore wood helped save the little chapel that stood. The old chandeliers that they'd packed away through the 2 world wars, they did not sway. So there's the sycamore tree, cracked in front of the little chapel, but the little chapel completely unharmed. Then the crystals reflected a busy scene when the doors opened up to the rescue team. There were firemen's shoes on the old iron fence where they'd early hung them in haste, quick and tense, as they pulled on their boots and raced to the towers, climbing melting steel to flaming showers. Oh, what gallant men and women did we lose who never came back to get their shoes. You can see they're carefully in the chandelier the image of those that were so brave. Ground zero smoldered, dark and grim. Our hearts stood still, then we all pitched in. Helpers brought shovels and pails or pans. If they had nothing else, they dug with their hands to clear the mountain of crumpled steel from a nightmare that was all too real. New York is the greatest city in the world, said the mayor. It has the greatest people, and we will never let a bunch of terrorists make us fearful. So you can see what was still taking place hours later as the smoke had gone away. Rescuers worked through the night and the day. In the chapel they paused, then go on their way. A hot cup of coffee, something to eat. Here the firemen, welders, policemen would meet. All would come to rest from their labor. Volunteer doctors, brother and neighbor. So during the recovery efforts and the work, the firefighters and police officers, they would be there and they would use the little chapel as a meeting ground to get warm coffee, to get the support they needed to take a little break. Policemen and firemen led the way, but other heroes braved that day. Passengers flying on Flight 93 said goodbye, I love you to their family, and fought the terrorists right to the ground. Was the White House where the plane was bound? We raised up the flag from the dust and the pain. Freedom that's lost must be won again. So in all the rubble and mess, they raised a flag. Each one of us is a link in that chain to do something grand or to do something plain. First we take heart, then we take aim. Our littlest good deed is never in vain. Working together is how we get through it. Little by little, we learned how to do it. It's nice to be big, and it's nice to be tall. But sometimes being little doesn't mean being small. Just like the chapel of Old St. Paul, hear the bells of freedom in what they say. Terror may come, but it will not stay. It will shake our world, but we will not sway. It will block the path, but we'll find our way. Free beneath the stars that shine both night and day. The end. Well, I hope that the little chapel that stood was a great read aloud for you that you enjoyed. I encourage you to be able to talk with your families about where they were on September 11th and what they remember from that. And what a great opportunity for you to experience history. So what's crazy about this day is that a lot of your teachers and your principal and your parents were alive when this happened, and we remember where we were. Some people maybe were in New York City. Others were here maybe in Little Rock or other places. But these stories are great ways for you to have a portal almost, like to be able to go and experience that history yourself, and that it can hopefully come alive for you. So remember, as this book said, being big and tall is great. Lots of things can be wonderful. However, the most important thing is that you need to be yourself and allow yourself to be supportive and loving and caring in whatever environment that you're in. So, as the little chapel stood tall and supported all those during September 11th, may you stand tall and firm in kindness and love towards others this school year. Virtual kids, I miss seeing you. In-person kids, I look forward to seeing you again soon. And I hope that all of you have a great Friday. Take care.